To our second community of practice workshop for the year. Please let us know in the chat where you're from. I know a lot of you are coming in from all over the continent. We'd love to hear where you're from. I'm based in Cape Town. So I'll go first. I'm based in Cape Town and I'm Jane.
Hello everyone, I'm Fabrice from Mauritius. Hi, Marie.
Welcome.
Hi Fabrice. Bonjour.
Hi Sabine from Windhoek. And Kevin from Cape Town. Hi Kevin. And hi Sam from Cape Town. Tandil from Durban. I hope it's nice and warm there.
Hello, I'm Bwibo Adieri from Kenya.
Welcome. Lovely to have you here. And I see we have somebody from the car park in Stellenbosch. Welcome from the car park in Stellenbosch.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Hello, welcome. Yes.
Otilia here from Namibia, Windhoek.
Welcome. And welcome James from Kenya. Martha from Johannesburg. Mark Donalds, we've got Kenya and Angela from Ghana. Hello from Cape Town. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello everyone, Ajmal from Mauritius.
Welcome from Mauritius. Hello, Ajmal.
Hello.
I think we're just going to give about 30 more seconds for a couple more people to enter the room, and then we're going to start in about 30 seconds. Hi, Putlako from Botswana and Ravi from Mauritius. Melissa from South Africa.
Hi.
Hello, I'm Vishal from Mauritius.
Hello, Vishal. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Lena Kamati, all the way from Namibia.
Welcome from Namibia.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tolopim Kopo. I'm from Eswatini.
Welcome. Lovely to have you here today.
Hello everyone.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome from me. My name is Ona Golding, and I am Executive Corporate Developer for SBS-ED, Botswana. I'm based here in Gaborone. It is great to have you with us today for the second SBS-ED Learning and Development Community of Practice Workshops for 2025. At Stellenbosch Business School Executive Development, it is our mission to empower leaders with tools they need to create meaningful impact. And these workshops are exactly part of that. They bring together HR and L&D leaders from across Africa in a safe space to share ideas, tackle challenges, network with peers, and leave with practical strategies you can apply immediately in your role. Today's topic is one I'm very excited about: creative leadership for fostering innovation. At workplaces, it has become more complex to include in our creative workspaces the nice to have. That is no more. It is now part of leadership to have it as a must have. How does it work? What role does L&D play? And how do we unlock such across our organizations? I am delighted to introduce our speaker, Ra'eesa, who is head of people function at Absa. Ra'eesa is a champion for building future fit talent and creating cultures where innovation thrives. Her expertise spans across leadership development, organizational culture, and change enablement. And of course, she's a Stellenbosch alumni. We are thrilled to have her with us today. Guiding us through the conversation is our facilitator, Anna-Marie. We have Anna-Marie as our facilitator today, who is a strategic consultant and a well-loved SBS-ED faculty member. Anna-Marie, take it away and let us enjoy today's session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear One. Thank you so much to my fellow SBS-ED colleagues, to my friends and peers and wonderful entrepreneurs in the chat box. Welcome, everybody. I really hope this is going to be a wonderful occasion for us to have this very necessary conversation. As One already indicated, this is a conversation about creative leadership in order to foster innovation. And I think how relevant, how absolutely relevant. Now, to obviously guide us through the practicalities of this, we've got Ra'eesa. I'm so happy to introduce you, Ra'eesa, because I spent 10 years in Absa, so it feels like I'm sitting with colleagues next to me today. So welcome, welcome. I just want to make sure that everybody is happy to engage and everybody is settled in. And maybe just to contextualize, because there's two big concepts that we're going to talk about today. The one obviously has to do with the creative leadership part. And I think one of the biggest stresses we have at the moment is to lead this innovative world that's coming. But I think to contextualize it and maybe to start off our conversation is the concept of innovation. So in many ways, innovation is contextual. So depending if you are an entrepreneur or you are in a tech startup or you are in a banking environment, obviously the concept of innovation is very different. Seeing, Ra'eesa, that we are in the fifth industrial revolution, and this is the era of hybridization where tech and people are coming together. How would you describe innovation? What is your definition? Maybe just to start us off, day to day, what are you dealing with?
So hello, everyone. It's really an honor to be here and to engage. So thanks, Anna-Marie, for that. When we think innovation, generally people think tech. But it's not limited to technology. It's not limited to systems. Innovation can be just re-looking at the way you do business. And why it's become so critical to innovate is because the landscape, the world has changed. You know, the opportunities that lie in front of individuals for their careers and businesses in markets have significantly shifted. So to pause, to look at how a person or an organization needs to shift and realign is innovation. You know, looking at doing things better and more efficient is innovation.
Oh, I love that. I love that because I think it's quite inclusive. As a design thinker and a systems thinker, the formal, the theoretical concept of innovation, I like this one from Professor Srikandatari, always says, it's about creating value for the end user through newness, which means that it doesn't matter if it's systems or people or processes or all of that. And you kind of like underline that for us. I know that, Ra'eesa, that banking is a tech business. Give us an example of what it plays in your lives from a banking point of view. Is it something you're dealing with every day, or are we just grabbing something because it's a jargon? Are we making it bigger than it is?
So banking has fundamentally changed from the way we know it, where we had brick and mortar branches where you'd go in, sit with a bank manager who had a lot of power, and you'd build a relationship to get things done. I don't think any of us walk into a branch anymore. Everything is so accessible.
I don't even know if we know our bank managers, so that.
When I started in banking, one of the biggest problems was queue management, how to get people out fast enough. And now people don't even come. It's not a problem we deal with anymore. Now we're trying to attract people to come in, So technology has fundamentally changed banking, but also in a scary way. The more we're online, the more we're exposed to fraud and security risks. So, fraudsters who hack into apps. In banking, for as much as we, create platforms, we create payments systems, we have to equally protect ourselves and our customers because this is a reality. Interception of payments has become huge, especially for some of our business clients. In attorney firms and those kinds of environments that keep money in trusts and then pay out. Interception of those payments. You get those little QR codes or links to say,
Yes.
We deal with those things every day where money is taken and funds are taken out of people's accounts. So fraud and security is the biggest thing when it comes to technology in banks, but accessibility, where people were not able to access financial assistance, where they were not able to access financial education. It's now all online, and we reach more people than we used to. So it's reshaped the way we do banking, but also there's more players. We used to always refer in the SA context to the big four. There's no big, because everybody's
in
fighting
fact, the
for the same
retailers are
markets.
coming through. Ra'eesa, the
And
retailers are possibly
fintechs.
one of the biggest embedded financial institutions at the moment. So I hear you.
Yeah, fintechs are popping up all over, and also free market where payment platforms, you can buy them. The only thing that protects banks at the moment is a banking license with the SARB or with whatever fiscal policy that sits in that country. So the license is the main barrier to entry into the market.
So it's almost
But
like there
similar
is a
pop-ups.
bit of governance that assists. I want to ask the people in the audience, as you are speaking, what is your feeling around innovation? What would you define innovation as? And this is very contextual. So again, I'm taking this as depending on where your perspective is and which sector you are operating in. Because we know, ladies and gentlemen, that the more the macro environment is shifting, our customers, the Generation Zs and the Alphas that are coming through, engage with tech and innovation per se in a very, very different way than us oldies, the goats in the house. So it's something that says that if our customer is changing, we need to change with them, either lead it or at least, be a fast follower in terms of that change. So if the audience wants to lean in and just give us a few definitions, and if anything jumps to mind, maybe our Chanel and Jane can maybe assist us. So the concept of innovation is there, it's happening, we cannot run away from it, we cannot boiling frog it and say it's not coming, it is here. But what about the leadership side? Because Ra'eesa, I think for me, it has always been a big, big concern that we know innovation is here. We know what's happening in the fifth industrial revolution. We can see it around us as consumers. But the question for me was never about us becoming, the best tech administrators or the best programmers or the best AI practitioners. It's always been about how do we lead innovation? Because the cockpit is inundated with complexity. And as we sit here every single day, it seems that we're adding more and more and more to the leadership agenda. And the concept that you described, specifically from a banking point of view, what would you say is I almost want to say your definition of leadership in this context, in this fast changing world that we are describing?
Yeah. So there's many types of leadership, but in an innovative landscape, I think leaders need to be very open to understand. I think the, the competence of curiosity, because we don't know everything, and leaders will never know everything, is to surround yourself with people who do have the answers and make good decisions. So curiosity, openness, also transparency, because sometimes with innovation, there's a lot of risk elements. So to keep transparency amongst the people is critical. And I would say that's the best way to lead during a time of innovation.
Beautiful. I read a quote from Zora Huster now, and I can't help giggling as she's talking about curiosity. She said, research, all that we are doing as academia has actually formalized curiosity, but we are poking and we are prying with purpose. So it's almost like if you are interested and you go there, it shows that you are kind of like practicing curiosity. So there's a sense of leaders need to be much more open than we used to be. You know, there was almost a traditional role of, you know, being the one that knows everything and leads everything and puts their hands up for everything and walks in front of everybody else. Now it's more about this environment that you're creating for your people that says it's okay to be curious. I'm hearing you say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So any style of leadership that you think jumps to mind? Because we know there's a million styles and we talk about situational leadership all the time. But what are you seeing, especially from an HR point of view? What is coming in terms of, you know, the leadership style that you are looking for?
Yeah. So with a highly complex environment and a lot of pressure, because markets are changing and they change so quickly that the plan can't even be closed. You know, the action plan is not even closed where a new plan is required because things have shifted. So leadership depends on what growth stage your business is at, and you have to tailor it that way. But I know we're talking about leadership for fostering innovation specifically today. When you're leading in an innovation environment, you have to be visionary. You know, my thing is that you have to see the end goal where people, you know, when the internet came on, everybody was like, oh, it was that web. Today we can't live without it. And the same thing goes for AI. You know, not everybody is on the same level with AI. Some people gravitate to it, you know, easier than others. And, you know, AI is here. AI is in our business. We're using chatbots. We're automating things. So AI is here, and I think it becomes more, as you learn more about it, you become more comfortable. But what's the next thing? After AI, what comes? And as a visionary leader, you need to let your people explore, you know, do the research and development in a safe environment for what's coming next. AI is here. You know, we've solved for that. What comes next?
It actually came from before 2020, and now we're commercializing it, but it's so prevalent and so all over that we think, you know, it's actually about the Internet of Things now, but now it's about bringing the human back, which to your point is about this visionary leadership that's needed. I read an article recently. I don't know if you agree with this. I see all the beautiful definitions of innovation, and if you guys don't mind, I'm so going to use you. So I see Teddy, thank you, Abram, thank you for your definitions there. Satara, this is spot on, guys. I think you are really enhancing the conversation we are having. But I read recently that we used to have leaders that come through the ranks in a specialized context. So it would be, let's say, somebody from finance that, you know, goes up to Exco. And at that point in time, you know, whatever was your competence, you are kind of like promoted out of your competence. So it's not about being the best finance person anymore. Now it's about knowing people and leading people, and who do you promote and who do you recruit, and all those things that become more important. Now, recently I've been seeing that that's not enough anymore. We are looking, they call it the comb shape leader, which says it's not a leadership style per se, but it's more about people that have breadth in terms of they are generalists. So they can see the whole value chain and have played a little bit in all parts of the business, but then they also have depth, not in one functional area, but in multiple functional areas. So we used to have people that were kind of like schooled in one, technical way of thinking. And now, the more you have in terms of specialization areas, to say, yes, I've been in HR, but I've also been in the commercial side of the business. I also know marketing, is becoming more and more and more valuable. Are you seeing anything like that? Or do you think the research is a little bit ahead of the practice?
No, I think the research it's spot on, and it's been like that for a while. Especially in senior roles, in director roles. Those are the things we look for when we're hiring, is the people element, the leadership element, especially when it comes to value creation and influence.
Yes.
It's getting things done through others.
Beautiful.
And why I agree with your comment and the research that specialization is quite limiting now is that as a leader, you need to make decisions that cross different functions. In order to make a decision, you need to have the facts, and you need to understand at a particular level what the different impacts are going to be of that decision.
That makes me think, ladies and gentlemen in the chat box, all our participants today, she's saying we need to jump around. It's okay if you can take the opportunity in the business to actually be exposed to more parts of the business than literally working your way up, Ra'eesa. Is that what I'm hearing?
Definitely. And you see a lot of like HR people going into business because they're really good at the people stuff, and you can always learn the business, but it's hard to teach someone a good attitude and to teach someone social skills. Those come naturally. So you see a lot of cross disciplines where HR practitioners and professionals are moving into the business because they can influence and they have those skills. But you're also seeing people in the banking. We're seeing people from the medical fraternity and engineering fraternity coming into banking and running big businesses because of the systems thinking and the way they can analyze things. So yeah, that's
That makes so much sense. And we used to be quite anxious when you hear that a new executive has been appointed and they don't come from the sector you are in. Let's say you're a retailer and all of a sudden somebody joins you from oil and energy. But we don't realize that our disruption is going to come from oil and energy. So to have that exposure and that thought leadership at that level, exceptionally helpful. So I also recently read, I think we chatted about this, Ra'eesa, is the fact that IBM, I think in the last 2 weeks, they published an article where they acknowledged that they just recently, like in a couple of weeks ago, retrenched 700 of their HR practitioners. And the reason they stated in this article was that, these were, I almost want to say routine jobs, routine functions that they replaced these HR practitioners with AI. Now, for me, immediately, I kind of like hyperventilate a little bit because from an African point of view, I think all of the people in the chat will agree. We have an imperative, almost a moral obligation, an ethical obligation to protect jobs and to create jobs. So anything like that, I'm thinking about this wave that is coming towards Africa. Now, the thing that we didn't know, and when I read the article, I actually Googled it and went deeper, is that the total headcount of IBM actually rose over this period. So although they were looking at the cost function, the cost centers and kind of like becoming a little bit more efficient by taking away roles there, they replaced those roles with the commercial side of the business where it was customer facing, and they actually recruited more than 1,000 people in those roles. Is this something you're seeing? Is this a trend where we kind of like right positioning also in terms of, as you said, AI is coming, it's not going anywhere, but it has a huge impact on the leadership and how we actually look at, resourcing our business in future.
Yeah, and in the banking sector, there was a time where we used to do restructures and retrenchments every 18 months because new technology was coming in and making jobs redundant with automation. So I think I've lived through it. It's not as frequent anymore, but it's definitely there. The way we look at it is creating meaningful work. If a bot can come in or AI can come in and take out the admin or the repetitive jobs, which becomes mundane, by all means, let them, especially in an HR world, if you printing pay slips and processing transactions, let technology take over that. Become more consultant and advisory led. So there's definitely opportunity for the two to coexist, but create meaningful jobs and work for people. And you talk about the ethical part of, coming from an African landscape, we have a ethical responsibility to preserve jobs. I think we can reframe that. We have an ethical responsibility to develop and grow people. So when we put technology in, what we always do is we look at reskilling and upskilling. So how do we take that knowledge where it sits from the knowledge worker, upskill them, teach them something new, and move them to do different work? So we've always managed to do that. So that ethical part that comes in is making sure that the reskilling and upskilling and development, talent management and talent development needs to be in the plan as well, not just bringing in the technology and forgetting about the people component.
Yeah. This is a big thing. I think, especially for the HR practitioners in the room, this competency that we've alluded to before, and what are we recruiting for, and where do we see the growth in terms of numbers? But your point now about upskilling people, what competencies do you think we are, developing the right things? And I'm specifically referring to, tertiary education, to in-house, orientation and training programs and things like that, because we seem to be doing the same thing. Obviously, there's some tweaks in our programs, but is there anything we are missing? And maybe in the chat box, can we ask our participants today, our very astute and learned colleagues in the chat box, what competencies are you thinking about, developing, and what are we missing? Because we cannot keep on doing the same thing over and over again, yet the landscape and what our leaders are dealing with in that to lead this innovative, creative, challenging spaces. It feels like it's not happening at the same pace, Ra'eesa. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah. So I'm also reading some of the comments which are so interesting. If I had to look at the key competencies that we would need moving out of the fifth industrial era, because we can't think for the now, we're in the now, we're solving the now, but we're planning for the future. I think that's also critical to visionary leadership, is not only to solve the now, we need to plan. The decisions we make in business today will be felt long after we're gone. People will come after us, and they would have to live through some of the decisions we make. Communication skills. We take it for granted that people know how to communicate, but a lot of time we just assume everybody comes from the same frame of thinking and background and interprets. When I was at university, we did communication studies and the two-way communication, and it sounds so basic, but interpretation,
so relevant,
and what happens in your mind and what comes out of your mouth and what's transmitted is so important, because a lot of conflict comes out of misunderstanding. You can take out
Yeah.
a lot of conflict and layers of complexity by just communicating. And we have communication in every single strategy and plan, whether it's internally or externally. So communication is really critical, and that's human beings. And if I give an instruction into Copilot, Copilot will understand the instruction the way I phrase my sentence. But if I talk to Anna Marie versus, Latoya, who's now, on the chat, the same sentence will be interpreted in two totally different ways. So I think that's a skill that will never die. And it's a humanness thing. It's not a
Yeah.
tech.
I
And we
also,
can't
I
replace
cannot,
that.
I need to support you there, because I think what we sometimes get wrong is, you know, the concept of technology is with us. We are in a very different era now, and it's not going to go away. It's so much so that I'm almost thinking that we shouldn't be releasing any form of development unless there's a technological element in there. But it's almost to me as if um, we're almost circling, the issue around why. We had this conversation about leadership before, you and I, about situational leadership and how leaders tend to, depending on what they're dealing with, every day is not the same. Business as usual are very often, about crisis management. It's not something that is controllable. And the fact that our leaders tend to, just react to that and not tell the team, listen, this is why I'm acting like this, or this is why we need to focus on this, or this is the why. That's a communication thing, yet we make it very complex and it's about purpose. It's just say why are you doing this? Why are you pulling all the people out of HR and putting them in sales? And tell us why. And that to me is such a big part of the communication, that sometimes as leaders we think, our people cannot handle it, or they won't understand it, or we are all grown-ups. We need to get that reasoning into our communication again to actually assist with this complexity. So I'm supporting you 2000%. I see Latoya mentioned critical thinking. Is this something that you are experiencing? Thank you, Latoya.
Critical thinking is the most underutilized
Let's not start.
competency. But
Let's think about
we
thinking as
all
we are thinking.
exactly, what are we thinking about when we're thinking? But we are all on autopilot. If you look at the way our lives are, the diary has no time for breaks. You start in the morning, between meetings, emails. I don't even think you consciously eat. I don't even think you think about the breaths you take during the day to ground yourself. We are so outcomes driven. It's one task to the next task to the next task. So when I coach executives, the one thing I ask them first is, are you taking time out to think?
To think,
You
yeah.
make such big decisions in the organization. Where's your notebook? and pen and paper, I still love it. I know lots of people use their cell phones, but there's something quite therapeutic in putting a pen to a page and putting your thoughts and being able to draw. Also, I'm a visual person. I learn visually, I think visually. So putting that pen to paper to draw out what's in front of me. So time to think and reflect, and then autocorrect is so important. So that critical thinking, and the critical thinking is about the triangle, right? There's so many different versions of the truth. Am I looking at it critically? Am I looking for an alternate view? Am I consulting? Am I asking an advisor? Am I testing this thinking with anyone? So that's where the critical element comes. So thinking is important, but testing the thinking to see that, my version of the truth is not the only version.
Makes absolute sense. And I think to me, it also brings in the element of strategy, because I think, the time to think and the way we tend to deal with this overwhelming amount of change that's coming every single day, to do a little bit of sense making, but also to put in that critical thinking, maybe a bit of almost intentionality around this curiosity thing that we started off with. I have to say this quote from Theodore Levitt. He said, Curiosity is thinking up new things, but innovation is doing new things. So, but we will never get to do it if we don't think it. You know, so the idea of dreaming and the idea of coming up with an ideal picture of the future and really thinking about what do you want in this new world? Where are your fault lines and all of that stuff? I think the busier we get and the more we incentivize a culture of busyness, the less we are thinking. So it's something that I don't know, because most of the things we teach at SBS-ED, you know, as a thinking modality like systems thinking or design thinking or innovative thinking, it has a thinking modality to it. But you cannot force somebody to take that time to practice it. And this is very personal. So to all the leaders in this chat today, you know, to really invest in yourself in terms of creating that space in your diary every single week, to think about those things that are top of mind, that are keeping you awake at night, the things that are worrying you, the things that you didn't finish from yesterday, and to make sense of that. I don't know if you're doing it, Ra'eesa. I'm almost
I
afraid
try.
to.
I try. I must admit, very early on in my career, you know, I always used to attend leadership development workshops and courses, and all of them recommended a journal, and I just could not journal. I was so like driven. It was like one thing to the next. I
Let's
was
just do
chasing.
something. Yeah.
Exactly, action. But as you mature and you get wiser, you realize why that reflection time is so important. And the journal is not about keeping a record. It's about taking what's in the mind, allowing it to flow and to be visible, you know, somewhere beside your head. Because our thoughts bounce to so many things. We don't only work. We have families, we have extended families, you know, there's stuff happening, a crisis happening that's occupying the social media that we just scroll through still sits in our mind. So to clear that mind and be able to say, I'm not giving that my time this week. You know, I'm prioritizing these three things because life's going to happen. But I know if I focus on these three things, I'm going to move forward in the week ahead. So that's why that reflection and journaling becomes so critical, especially for a leader, because it's not about you. It's about the people that you are leading and what do they need. So you have to think about what they need from you, but also what would you need to be able to fill your cup to give it to them.
Yeah. Makes absolute sense. I just want to talk a little bit about leadership in the context of strategy before I come back to the competence, because I don't think we're done there. Mainly, when we talk about people that are in this innovative future fit space, the strategies that we reference we call them the need seekers. These companies are the companies that literally look at the pains and the gains from a customer point of view, and they are first. Unapologetically wanting to be first. They will do anything to get to the market. You know, they will fail fast, fail forward. They do, you know, even if it's a 60% finished product, it's about being first. And this is usually in the tech space. And then you get the market readers. They come like almost like in a slipstream of these firsts in the market, and they intentionally write the strategy to say, no, we don't want to be first. It's too risky, because Sophie in the chat box was talking about risk tolerance. So they say, no, do you be first. I'm going to wait until learn from your mistakes, until you paid all your dues, and then I'm going to come in and just change the pricing slightly or change a feature or a benefit slightly and be second and create a pricing war where our customers at the end of the day, or our end users, will benefit from both of us being there, because now they can choose. Now they've got choice. Now, in terms of this innovative space, what is the pressure on you as a leader to be that need seeker, that first, versus that from a strategic point of view, versus let's just calm down. We are a financial institution. We want to be stalwart, traditional. There's nothing wrong with being traditional because we're working with people's money. So the sense of, calming down, do you see that pressure in the environment on leaders to kind of like always be first, because it's so sexy to be innovative and to be first, to have the kudos to say, you know, I've been first in the market. I was the one that launched X, Y, or Z. Any thoughts on that pressure that we're dealing with?
It's there, and it's sometimes in the small process. It's not about market leading, so it can be interpreted in two ways. One is to be first in the market, to disrupt the market, to be known for a big thing. And there's a different one where leaders every day are pressurized to do things simpler, faster, cheaper.
Better, smarter, cheaper.
Exactly. I think that innovation and refinement in processes to relook at policies, it exists in every organization. But the one that you're referring to, which is first in the market, the pressure, you know, to disrupt a market, to say, I'm the leader of X, Y, or Z, that depends, and that's not a decision at a middle management or even an executive, that is at a shareholder level. Because it depends how much risk you're willing to take and how much of capital you're willing to put behind the risk. So at a shareholder, if your investors are very risk averse, you are not going to have that pressure.
Not
But
interested.
if you're in a business where your shareholders are saying, we want our name in those big lights
Out
and
there,
that's what we want, you know, fail, it's fine. We'll get more capital to invest in that, but this is what we want and we're chasing it. So purpose in an organization is critical. Why do you exist? And what do your shareholders ultimately want? That determines how aggressively you would go out to disrupt or create innovation in a market. And everybody else just follows.
I really appreciate your honesty here, because if you are in a session, a facilitated session, and we bring the customer into the room, everybody's customer empathy, customer sensitivity, customer focus, but I know we are shareholder centric because this is the most important, urgent 90-day mandate that we run. All of us are in a commercial spot. Most of the listed companies, we've got entrepreneurs in the chat box, we've got people that run their own businesses, but mostly the listed companies are exceptionally under pressure. And I'm laughing as you're talking, because every time I attend all the tech and AI workshops, not because I understand half of the things these deep techies are talking about, I'm just literally curious if I see anybody there that can maybe also look like me, like dumbfounded about what's going on in our new world. But what seems to happen is the moment we go home after these workshops and we see all our peers, it's almost like keeping up with the Joneses. There's a new word that becomes jargon, and there's and then there's a new sense of urgency at Exco of, oh my goodness, everybody seems to be doing this, or we're just seeing all these EV, electric vehicles on the road. Where's our electric vehicle? If it's purposeful or not, doesn't matter. It seems like we're putting that pressure on ourselves to almost keep up. And that's why sometimes it breaks my heart a little bit when we are in these sessions and I can feel that pressure on the leaders, and they know that it's coming, but they don't know what to do with it. It's almost like that fox terrier chasing that tractor wheel, don't know what to do when we catch it. So I almost want to extend this conversation to the chat box also and say that you said it, Ra'eesa, that this concept of purpose and the concept of why are we here, and to me the customer sits slap bang in that purpose. Without the customer we will not be here. And if that determines the pace and the breadth and the depth at which your innovation appetite should go, then that's everything. And I'm saying that knowing your point about the shareholder is so true. So is it like a balancing act, almost like a, you need to really have big shoes on to fight, to resist that pressure. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, you are. And at the end of the day, everything comes down to cost. Because even if you have a customer at the center, if you can't sustain yourself as a business, your doors are going to close. And sometimes that's the biggest thing that leaders grapple with is we want to move forward. We know how, but we don't have the resources to, or it's not the right timing. And I'm going to take us back to an example of the retail market and 60/60. Checkers has done phenomenally, and we've workshop business cases.
Shout out to Checkers in the chat box.
No, but
And my
it's a good story to tell, and we've gone in to study that business model on what they did. Checkers didn't develop the app in Checkers. That's not what Checkers does. They bought it from a fintech that did it really well, and they still run it on. When you go on, you see 60/60, but the back end is an independent software company. That's how you do it in business. Sometimes you don't have the money or the luxury of time to research and develop. But you go out there into the market, you look at, who's doing it well, you buy it, you implement it. So that's what they did. They bought it. The timing of when it was in COVID was the right timing. People just gravitated. We have the Pick and Pay one, we have the Woolies Dash, but no one does it as good as 60/60. And that's the competitive advantage that businesses need to look at. So yes, innovation, sometimes you can sit and you can grapple with it for a couple of years. It takes a lot of time, people, resource, and money. But sometimes you just need to go out there and see who's doing it brilliantly and buy it.
I agree. And I think sometimes we think it's a lifelong partnership. It's almost like a BMW 5 Series who, asked Apple to stand next to them to build their onboard computers because Apple does it better than them. But that's for this one launch. It's not ad infinitum. So I always joke in the sessions and I say to my colleagues, sometimes it can be a one-night stand. It doesn't have to be a marriage. It's like do the partnership and then it mutually benefits, especially if it's two very strong brands coming together. Thank you for that. I feel what you're saying because it comes back to this concept of purpose. So I want to quickly pivot back to competencies because what we're seeing that are emerging, and this comes from my day job, which is a business consultant, is that cross-functional teams are the most innovative. There is no doubt about it. And the more diverse those teams, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm not talking about gender and culture and all those things. I'm talking about diversity in thinking. So the more diverse the perspectives you have in that cross-functional team, the more you shoot the lights out. Now, obviously, the difficulty is that we don't think the same. Therefore, it's not an easy team. It's not like, we sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya in the morning before we start this beautiful, life-changing work that is innovation. It is tough conversations. It is hard conversations. But that sense of safety to differ from somebody is a cultural thing. So before we even get to the cultural stuff, are you seeing this cross-functional phenomena coming through in terms of the way we set up change projects in the business, or is it still only theoretical?
No, diversity of teams is crucial. We don't play in siloed markets anymore. Like you said, banking, you can go into a Pick and pay your light bill. There's no silo industries anymore, and they are increasingly merging with each other. So cross-functional teams, even markets. So like I said, in banking, and I come from banking, so I'm going to use that as my benchmark. We have doctors, we have pharmacists, we have engineers, telecoms. So we went through a time where we would hire a lot of people with the telecommunications knowledge because they understand apps. They understand how you buy, data in bulk, where data gets stored, those kinds of things. So and again, I come back as a leader, you will not have all the lenses, all the perspectives. So to have people like that around the table making decisions with you brings in the different perspectives. It challenges you to think differently, but also it mitigates some of the risk that you only learn when you make a mistake. Mistakes are not failures. They are just, stumbling blocks and learnings. Yes, and learnings. But sometimes they're costly as well. So if you have diversity of thinking, you can mitigate some of those risks because you say, we call it scenario planning. So you scenario plan for the risk and then you go ahead with the decision. But to have those diverse perspectives, there's different markets. Exactly. And also your customer. sits in different communities, in different professions, in different businesses. So there's always that, the lens that, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, true. You're almost mirroring. So I see my European clients, a lot of them are literally resourcing in cross-functional teams. So what they do is they don't have the hierarchical structures anymore with the 5 levels of work. They tend to project everything. So maximum 2 levels of work, and then this diverse team coming from all the different functional areas. And it's almost the agile way of working. And the thinking is that we never optimally resourced for change. We either over-resourced or under-resourced, and I'm not even talking about the competence in that diversity. So the fact that we have that ability to almost get you on contract for that project's phase becomes exceptionally helpful in terms of getting the right thinking, the right diversity, and the right resourcing for that time. So I almost want to urge us as African, participants in this room to think about your own CV and your own SWOT analysis to say, how will I become the one that, I can put my hand up and they will choose me for that cross-functional team? What skills and competencies do I need to display to be that mirror of the customer so that I can lean into this project format of structuring our business in the future? Because I think the way we used to do this org design thing for innovation has become very laborious and slow. And I always joke, I say, by the time you get sign off for innovation, it's not an innovation anymore. So it's almost like the big players are starting to do a lean start. They're kind of like mixing the structure with the normal traditional structure, and then this agile, flat, fast, cross-functional teams that can run these change projects, which is the case with, many of the big players in the industry. So I'm so happy to hear that we are embracing it and we're starting to do almost a hybrid of the two, because I don't think we are ready to step over completely, but to be there where we can at least structure for change, because sometimes our intention and our strategy and our leadership says, yes, we're going to innovate, but the way we deploy it in our organizational design doesn't support it. Does that make sense? Is it something you're experiencing too?
Yeah, and maybe that's the other competency that we need to develop is change management. So you'll see in a lot of structures, change or transformation sits as a department, but actually the competency should sit in every leader, because you're changing and you're evolving every day. So if there's a competency that you want to build, it's change. And most project managers historically came from a change background.
Environment.
So exactly. So the project management capability and the change management competency is critical. When you can think in that systems, look at the root cause, then build, allocate resources, time, all of those things as if you were planning for a project is a great skill, to have. So that
Beautiful.
that project management stuff. Yeah.
I see Jane posted some of the questions in the chat box are coming through that the audience wants to know. In these big, complex, large, multinational organizations we have in Africa, how do we move the concept of creativity and growth and innovation and almost this curiosity that we've been talking about today? How do we move those skills, from soft skills to very much measurable, managed competencies on people's development plans? Because it's almost the last thought when we are seeing a flip of the pyramid where it becomes the first thought. It needs to be something that leads your how you show up in the world. Yet we still make it, well, if your DNA is correct, or and then it has this minute measure of 10% of the overall 90, so you kind of like chuck it. So is there any tips or tools that you can maybe suggest, Ra'eesa, without giving you a hospital pass, where we can make these competencies a little bit more managed and measured, a little bit more quantitative rather than qualitative?
Yeah, so I'm also going to, there's two ways I want to answer this question. The second part is, I'll give you an example of what I do and one of the leadership measures that we use in the bank. But the first part I also want to address, when you sit in HR and something is not working in the business, it's generally either we don't have enough people to do it, or the people don't have enough training to get it done fast enough or at the right performance level. And that's not always the case. So as an HR practitioner, you need to go and understand what is happening in the business. Understanding the business context to be able to bring about innovation is so critical. You can't say, I'm the HR person, call me for the soft stuff. No, you need to understand the commercialities of the business you operate in to be able to advise them properly. So you need to understand what the jobs do, how the jobs work, what the time allocations, the impact analysis of those jobs. Because it's not always we need more people or we need to send them for more training. Sometimes the way we are structured.
Are you saying we need more business people in HR, Ra'eesa?
That's also possible. And it's good to play around and to bounce around, because maybe the structure is wrong. Or and sometimes the leadership is wrong, and that's the last thing we look at until we get ER cases and those kinds of things, and then we're like, is actually, if we change the leader, everything changes. There's so many different perspectives to look at why things are going in a particular way, and it's not throwing people at the problem is not always the answer. There's something fundamentally wrong, and we can do it more efficiently if we just take the time to look at it critically. So that's the one part I want to address. The second part on how to measure leadership. So we currently, and we're still learning, so we've recently put a leadership effectiveness measure in place. So what we do is, and it's 4 components that measure leadership. It's around a 360 feedback that we get, where the leader gets it from their manager, their peers, and their direct reports. And there's a score that goes with that. And there's difference about listening skills, communication skills, role modeling skills, all of those things form that score. The second part is the engagement score. So what is the culture? And we do a survey in the business that tells us what that looks like. So what is the culture that you're creating as a leader? The second part is talent management. The third part is talent management. And how are you growing people? And what does your succession plan look like? And then the fourth one is, just the people, the general colleague health measures that make up that business.
Do they have sizable measures? Is it like nilly-willy, percentage of the overall score? Is it really impactful? Because that's what worries me about some of these things.
Yeah. So currently we're playing around with it. Like I said, we're still learning. When we started it was 10%. It's now gone to 20%. So if you look at it, financial performance might be 60% and the leadership effectiveness is 20%. But we're still exploring it. It's not
final. I know the more higher up you go, obviously the bigger component that makes up of your scorecard. So it's not, it's band dependent or level dependent. Right. But I'm happy to hear that, there's intention to move it into different, and there's very interesting measures coming through. I think that we haven't explored yet. The fact that we're doing proof of concept and a little bit of prototyping is very healthy. I just recently read that the United States is now spending almost 1.3% of their GDP on AI. Now, this is, if you compare it to the heydays of telecoms, at the maximum of spend from a US point of view, they were spending 1% of their GDP on telecoms. So, and bricks and mortar at the moment, they are building more, storage facilities in terms of AI than they are building bricks and mortar for office space. So there is huge investment going into tech and huge investment going into, this new world that we are entering into. And I look at this and I'm thinking, we are playing. We are playing. Do we have the rules of this game? Because, sometimes if you think about AI, it's very patient in the sense that, it sometimes feels we're on the field, but the rules of the game are not yet clear. And if you create a fact, which is, a false truth, and you repeat it enough, AI will repeat that as a fact. So it's almost like the ethics and the morals and all the rules of the game that needs to be in place are not necessarily in place, yet we're on the field. Any thoughts on that, Ra'eesa? Is it only my concern?
No. So when you build technology, you build rules into it. Okay, so everything is rule based and also machine learning. The more data that goes into it, it interprets that and it becomes more intelligent. However, there's a human intervention behind a lot of that. So we compute things that go in. If we look at Amazon, when they did an AI recruitment, I can't remember what it was, but I saw a headline saying that the CVs that were being shortlisted excluded women. And they only found out afterwards, when all the shortlists were men, that the rules that went in actually excluded women completely from the shortlist.
Sometimes it's not facetious, it's not intentional, it just happens because that's the way, you know?
Exactly. But also, it's a fear that we all have, but we don't know the potential of this technology. You know, AI can do amazing things. Copilot is now part of our day-to-day. You know, sometimes you're sitting in an exco meeting and a topic comes up. The first thing you do is you go into Copilot and you type it out so you see what the thinking is, you know. It's like supplementing some of our own thinking ability. So we don't know, it's powerful. We don't know what might come with it. You know, you also go to some of these conferences where the identity theft, identity theft has become huge. Someone can take your pictures of social media, your ID, and create someone else that's called Anna Marie and live that life online. So the risks are there. And I think a policy and stuff would come out when we know what the risks are. Because
it will form as we go. Yeah.
We can't solve what we don't know.
Yes.
And those, again, going to be hard lessons to learn. Because we will have to face it head on and then create the policies that secure us and safeguard us against some of these things.
I hear you. I think we are almost running out of time. So I need to touch on culture because we know, ladies and gentlemen, that innovation is cultural. If that elephant in the room says, no, I don't want to change, it doesn't matter how beautiful, how sexy, how first your innovation and leadership is in terms of wanting to deploy that strategy that brings this change that will keep up with our customers and delight them in the future. So this context of culture and innovation, how are we driving that, Ra'eesa? How should we be looking at this? Is anybody specifically accountable for this and responsible for this in our businesses? Is it traditionally at a certain level? Is it something we need to think about again, especially because of the pace at which it's happening? And I sometimes think our culture is not keeping up with it because culture is such an emotive thing. It's the way we do things around here don't change like that. Yet one small nanovirus can change everything in a minute. So any thoughts on this culture of innovation and how to kind of like lead this?
Culture is so dynamic. You and I can work in the same organization, but be led by two different people, and we'll feel differently about the way things are done in the same organization. So leadership and transparency, psychological safety, all those buzzwords, they're not just buzzwords, because when things are falling apart, that's when culture steps in. When things are going well, we just take it for granted that, the culture is fine. But when things are going wrong, that's when we stop and we look at what is the culture telling us. Also for me, culture is around relationships. What are the relationships like within the organization? Is there trust? Do we work off the same value? Are there strong values in this organization? So you touched on it earlier about diversity. So does a culture foster diversity? Does it foster open-mindedness and diverse thinking? And it's set for as much as culture lives in the business, it's set on the top. Because if senior leadership do not tolerate certain things, it doesn't filter.
Ain't gonna happen. Yeah.
And also it's what we reward. If we're rewarding people to just keep to the status quo and give us profits every year, and that's what we're driving and we reward, that's what people will give us. But if we start recognizing and rewarding openness, thinking, transparency, people willing to play around with concepts and fail, then they'll do more of that. And that becomes the culture. We all love to say we have a culture of growth and learning, but if we don't allow people the time to attend, to learn, to sit in different meetings
or we recruit
across
for this
levels.
beautiful diversity and then we give you 2 weeks to fit in or something like, it's almost like, what are we doing? We're saying the one thing, but we're doing something else, nee?
And culture is also, it's dictated to by some of the decisions we make. So we say one thing, but we do something else. We say we want more women in an organization, but our policies are not conducive to, the challenges that women face. So are those things aligned? But definitely definitely safety is being able to say when something's not going right, or do I sweep it under the carpet? That what lives is in most organizations, that fear culture.
It's very effective. It's effective short term, and I think that's why it survives. So I think what you're saying, what I hear, and I think maybe that this is a theme going through our conversation today. It's almost like leaders need to show up in the way that enables that environment that is future fit. So if you show up in a way where you are confident and where you feel competent, it's possibly yesterday's stuff because that's where you came from. So it almost means that our leaders need to be brave and resilient and courageous and kind of like think of that word and really idealize that ideal state and talk about it, because you spoke about communication right off the bat. So there's a lot of things that were thrown around in this room today, and I wish we had more time to discuss everything. And I see you guys. Oh my goodness. Lisa, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Hallelujah, indeed. So the thought processes, Abraham, I see you in terms of the change management that's required. There's so many concepts that we didn't get to today. But what a wonderful conversation in the chat box. So Ra'eesa, before we close off, any last thoughts, any comments from you? Please create hope for us. Are you hopeful about this future? Is this something that you are excited about?
So definitely. People will always be part of business, and people do business with people they like. And we not only leaders in a business context, we leaders in our families, in our communities, social circles, we bring out that, and there's opportunity everywhere. I think my final parting words is to any leader, if there's a skill that you take away from today, is pause. Learn how to pause. I find that a lot of leaders, when the spotlight is on them, they want to react. They don't absorb, they don't take in the information and then come back with something that can be taken forward. So pause in the moment, learn to be able to be comfortable in silence. Go back, do what you need to do, think about it, and then say, give me 5 minutes and come back. But being able to pause is so powerful as a leader.
It's almost like you're breaking
this
wave. This wave of change that's coming. It's almost like you're contradictory to it. So it makes me think of Michelle Obama, who says, if they go low, we go high. If they go left, we go right. It's almost like it's counterintuitive to the pace and the busyness of this change. I love that, Ra'eesa. That's such wise words. And I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us, because I think there's some beautiful concepts in here that, in reflection, I hope some of you will listen to the recording again, because I think there's a lot of words that we can contemplate and we all can learn from. Before I hand back to Une, I just again want to thank everybody in the chat box. Don't think we're not reading. I'm seeing everything, but I'm so aware of the concepts that Ra'eesa's busy sharing, that I wanted to just make time and space for you to actually show up. I think, ladies and gentlemen, last words from me. Steve Jobs said, you know what, innovation actually distinguishes the leaders from the followers, and it's an intentional choice. I think we do not all need to be leaders. It's beautiful to be a follower. If that is your strategy, that is okay. And as we sit here, all of us in this room, and we are multi-generational, coming from multiple sectors, from multiple countries in Africa, we are literally witnessing a generational technological shift. And this shift is going to change every single facet of our lives. How exciting! How blessed are we? So I hope as leaders you feel encouraged and that you can embrace this, and that you will do your work so that when we show up, we are ready for the hotness in this kitchen. So thank you everybody for a wonderful discussion. Thank you, Ra'eesa. One, over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in today's session. A very special thank you to you, Ra'eesa, for sharing such insightful thoughts over today's subject matter. Anna-Marie, your expert facilitation is always appreciated. I hope everyone is leaving the room with fresh ideas and practical tools to share back with your respective teams and organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, this was our second L&D workshop for the year. We look forward to hosting you for our third and final workshop, which will be hosted in October. Please keep an eye on your inboxes and on our LinkedIn page. From myself and the entire SBS-ED team, we appreciate your commitment, we appreciate your curiosity, and we are grateful that you are, the people who are investing so much in the L&D platform across Africa. From myself, again, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you soon. Keep leading with creativity and purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. What a wonderful session. Great to see everyone. We will be sharing the recording in our thank you email that we'll be following. Yes.